Hey, welcome back to Zombie Tactics. It's a rainy day here in Northern California, and looking up at the clouds, it's all murky, and there are no shadows, and the light is diffused, and it's sometimes difficult to tell one thing from another and make distinctions because the light is not clear. It's just kind of murky. And we're going to talk about some things that are a little bit murky and unclear today in the context of being a man with a gun, or a woman if you care, but an ordinary citizen who carries a weapon for their personal protection. And that's what we're talking about today, whether it's concealed or out in the open where it's legal to do so in some cases. I was just in Nevada recently, and it's completely legal there in most places to just carry a weapon on your hip. It's called open carry, and it's a fine thing if it's legal where you live. I didn't intend to make this a series initially. I made a video a while back called Man with a Gun, The Concealed Burden, about the attitude you ought to have in really being the good guy and making sure that you are the good guy if you're carrying a weapon on you, and that you go out of your way to not cause trouble or not be a part of trouble. But I was talking to the Haas USMC the other day, and he kind of indicated that he liked when I do series. So I'm going to turn this one into a series. I'm going to talk a little bit more about your responsibilities as a citizen, or your activities as a citizen if you do carry a weapon for self-defense. I'm also going to approach this same topic from a different angle as a part of the Gun Fu series, talking about how we train for murky situations that aren't clear. The title of the video today is Man with a Gun. The Man with a Gun, Hoodies, Pancakes, and Bullets. Now that might give you a clue what we're going to talk about today, because we're going to talk about two different instances here where someone with a weapon did something or didn't do something, and what they might have done or what they might not have done. Of course, we're talking about the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman incident when we're talking about hoodies, and we're talking about pancakes. We're talking about the IHOP incident in Carson City, Nevada. Now, unlike most people that have done videos on the IHOP incident, I went ahead and I visited that location because it's a location that I knew well. I used to work out of an office in Carson City, a remote office of the company that I worked for, and I had breakfast at that IHOP many times. So I went back to the scene, I took measurements, and I actually interviewed a few witnesses that were there that day. I interviewed a total of 3 people. There was supposed to be a 4th, and I just, couldn't get them to actually make contact with me and put it together. And of course, the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman incident, I don't know anything more than anybody else does. I'm just glad that it's going through the process of the justice system and moving forward. But with what we can know about these two instances, and particularly what I've learned about the IHOP incident, I want to talk a little bit about carrying a weapon and how the circumstance dictates your actions, or what you might do or what you might not want to do. Now, the first instance, the hoodie incident, there's a good example, in my view, of what I talked about in the previous video, Man with a Gun, The Concealed Burden, of something that you might not want to do. Now, I'm taking the approach that I don't know whether George Zimmerman is guilty of murder or manslaughter or what, but I'm making certain assumptions, and these are just assumptions. If you don't share these assumptions with me, that's fine, but I'm just going to go with it like this. I'm going to go with it from a certain standpoint that, I live in a community that has people walking through it all the time that don't live in this community, and some of them look a little bit suspicious. If you've watched some of my previous videos, you know that there have been break-ins on 3 houses on my block in recent history. So there is some cause for alarm when someone's walking through your block late at night and they look like they might be up to no good. Well, what did George Zimmerman do that I would do differently? And again, I'm making no claim one way or the other as to whether he's guilty of a crime or whether he just got himself in a situation he shouldn't have been in. Well, I think he did the right thing by calling 911 and saying, hey, there's somebody on my block, looks like they're up to no good, they look suspicious to me, please send a car around and I'll meet you and I'll point them out to you. Where I think George Zimmerman went wrong, and where he potentially at least escalated the situation to the point where violence ensued, was that he didn't leave it there. He didn't just watch from a great distance and keep himself out of the incident. At least that's kind of the impression I get. Now, it could have been the case that Trayvon Martin snuck up on him. Some reports seem to indicate that. But think about this. You've got a gun on you, and what you want to do is you want to do everything possible to stay out of a situation that results in violence. What should have George Zimmerman done? He should have stayed in his car, for one thing, and he should have stayed as far away from Trayvon Martin as he needed to in order to maintain his own safety and to make sure that he didn't become a part of any crime that might have been about to be committed. For instance, if he saw Trayvon, trying to jimmy a door or something like that, you don't go running up on somebody like that. And of course, there's no report that happened. But the point is, there is not violence being done against another individual in your presence. Somebody's not directly threatening you, at least at that point in time, at the point that he made the 911 call. So what do? You stay the heck out of it. If there's no violence being perpetrated against another person, you got no business getting into it with anybody. You're not a cop. You're not, a superhero just because you have a gun on you. Stay the heck out of it. Make the 911 call. Stay, as far away as you need to keep your eye on the person so that when the cops come by and this guy that may be up to no good, he sees the police car and he ducks behind a building, you can say, "Officer, I'm the guy that made the call. I think he ducked behind that building over there. I'm going home. If you need to call me, this is my phone number, and the 911 operator has my number, and that's it, and I'm out of there." The fact that I've got a gun or not makes no difference as to how I act there. I want to stay as far away from any potential violence as possible. And what I think George Zimmerman did in this case that was wrong was he didn't do that. He didn't just plain stay away. Now, it may be that Trayvon Martin is the biggest dirtbag known to mankind. It may be that he's just a kid who went to the store to buy a bag of Skittles and some iced tea, and the situation went bad. But what seems clear to me is George Zimmerman kind of just could have stayed out of the whole thing. And, it may have gone to the point where somebody's house got broken into that night by Trayvon Martin. But that's infinitely better than anybody being dead at the end of a scenario like this. So that's my thought on that. Now let's go to another situation where I think that an armed citizen could at least potentially act differently. And I'll show you where I think my dividing line is, or at least where one dividing line is. The IHOP incident. I investigated that incident to whatever extent, some guy on YouTube can. Like I said, I went there, I took measurements, I'd been to that place before, having worked in the area. I can tell you a whole lot of things about it. I can tell you that a lot of the things that you're hearing people saying, like, it would have taken a 100-yard headshot to end the incident, and there's no way a person with a pistol can go up against somebody with a rifle and all that kind of stuff. That's pretty much nonsense. The measurements I took, the people I talked to, the bullet holes in cars that were still, one person I talked to still had bullet holes in his car because his insurance hadn't covered it yet. At most, you could have engaged the nut at 10, 15 yards, 20 yards maybe at the outset, from many, many different positions of cover. And you could have made a difference in that case, even with a small pistol like what was it, a Keltec PF9 that the owner of the barbecue restaurant had. Now, I'm not saying that he has a positive responsibility to act in such a case like that. What I'm saying is that you can act responsibly in a case like that and engage someone who's involved in an active shooter incident, and you're not out of your element if you have sufficient training and experience to do something like that, and of course the mindset to do that. So in that incident, I would say that someone would be perfectly within their rights to engage someone who is actively involved in doing violence against other people. If someone has got an AK-47 and they're just opening up on innocents in your presence, I don't know how you can make the excuse that there's nothing you can do. Even if all you can do is shout, "Hey, over here, I've got a gun, boom, I'm going to shoot at you," and then hide behind a wall. That's another 15 seconds that he's not shooting somebody else. Now, of course, that's up to the individual. You may not have the mindset or the presence of mind to do something like that. And it's always terrible to second guess somebody in an incident like that. So I'm not specifically second guessing the owner of the barbecue restaurant. Who knows what was going through his mind? I make no insult against the gentleman, or I make no claim that he should have done this, he should have done that. I don't know him. I don't know what his mindset is. I don't know what his training is. For all I know, he just barely bought that handgun the day before. and had no experience in using it. But it's certainly the case that in a case where someone is actually doing violence against other people, killing other people in your presence, you're not out of your league, you're not out of your lane, you're not out of your area of operation or your area of responsibility if you have the mindset, the training, the skill to get involved and make a difference in an incident like that. Again, it was not a case where there was nothing that no one could have done. A trained individual with even fairly minimal weaponry could have changed the entire face of that incident for the better, I believe. Just a few thoughts from me about the dividing line between what we can do and what we cannot do, that kind of murky area in the middle where sometimes it's not always clear. And that's my perspective on hoodies, pancakes, and bullets. That's zombie tactics for tonight, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.